Welcome to the Emotional Abuse Recovery Podcast, a podcast specifically designed to help you heal after a toxic or narcissistic relationship. This podcast teaches you to use your subconscious mind to go from feeling stuck to set free. In here, you will learn how to use the power of your own mind to free yourself from emotional pain, move forward with confidence, and experience the inner peace you deserve in your healing journey after emotional abuse. I'm your host and subconscious reprogramming coach, Allison Dagny. So let's get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the podcast today. I have a very special guest with me, and I'm going to allow her to introduce herself, and then we're going to get into some really interesting stuff today that I'm super excited for you guys to hear all about. So, Elizabeth, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everyone who you are.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here. Yes, Elizabeth Kipp here. I'm a stress management specialist. I'm a trauma-trained and yoga-informed addiction recovery coach. Ancestral Healing Practitioner, also a historical trauma specialist. And I'm a betrayal coach as well. I work as a certified betrayal coach on Dr. Debbie Silber's PBT Institute platform. PBT Institute stands for Post-Betrayal Transformation Institute. It's a long moniker there. Mm-hmm. And I'm one of the coaches there, and I bring in the ancestral piece. Mm-hmm. I also bring in trauma-informed yoga into that space because healing from betrayal is really important, and the issues get caught in the tissues, and so we want to gently release those. So I bring in that. And also, as the chronic pain, as the kind of the stress management specialist, all of the coaches there on that platform are informed at that level, but I kind of have my own take on things, very, very sciencey, neurophysiological kind of stuff that I bring in. So ancestral stuff and the science.
Yeah. You have so many different hats that you wear. You have so many different things that you do, but they're all related to the same thing as far as healing, and it's under that one umbrella. So I love that, and I'm super excited to talk about this and learn more about it, because there's a lot of things that I don't know about this either, and I'd really like to know myself, but also share it with everyone here who's listening, because it's the Emotional Abuse Recovery Podcast, but I always want to bring new ideas and new tools and new tips and healing techniques that maybe people just aren't aware of, and they can figure out what aligns the most with them and pick and choose. What works for you might not work for me, and that's okay. So we need to figure out what is the best thing for ourselves. So can you tell us first, what I'd love to know is a little bit about your background, the story about how you ended up on this path and how you ended up, making this journey to where you're at today, helping the people you help.
Yes, thank you. So my childhood was kind of started out with a lot of trauma. I was born with a closed pyloric valve, and so I couldn't take in nutrients. They had to put me at a 45-degree angle. My pediatrician was really divinely inspired, I feel, because they didn't have NICUs back then. They didn't have surgery. I don't do surgery for that. She put my mattress on a 45-degree angle, and gravity opened that in 2 weeks.
Wow.
But my mom went into a very deep depression right after she gave birth, and kind of disappeared for 9 months. I had this issue with eating. So I kind of started out with some challenges, mm-hmm. right? And a big rupture there between mother and child, mm-hmm. right there psychologically. That's a pretty profound wound. I really didn't understand the impact of that until many, many years later. Now, I fast forward, I had an accident when I was 14, and I broke a vertebrae, split a vertebrae in the bottom of my back. I had to have a lot of surgery for that some years later, when that area became quite unstable. And I was prescribed a lot of opiates and anti-anxiety medicine to deal with the pain. So I really dealt with one kind of chronic pain or another for about 40 years.
Mm.
And some of that was addiction. Also, I had my mom, again, my mom was, had this mental instability. She had bipolar disorder,
Mm.
and she had chronic pain herself, and she used alcohol to, rather than pills. She didn't do well with medication, so she used alcohol. So she was a hot mess,
Mhm.
doing the best she could at the time,
Mhm.
but it created some problems. And at one point, this is a note. This is not about, oh, poor me. This is not where I'm coming from. I'm coming from as information. At one point, she was drinking and she had a cold, and she took an antibiotic, and she mixed antibiotic with alcohol, and she became psychotic and threatened my life.
Wow.
And so I'm bringing that in, not as a from a victim mentality thing, but as an educational thing.
Mhm.
Do not mix things like that. You
Mm.
don't want to mix alcohol with medication.
Mhm.
It's just super dangerous. It's
Yeah.
dangerous to other people. It's dangerous to you.
Yeah.
So that's just a note. But
Okay.
those things, those things that I've just talked about had profound influences on me, and I learned a lot about the nature of emotional pain, physical pain. I didn't realize that so much of my physical pain really had a root in the emotional pain that I kind of grew up in
Yeah.
until much later. And I finally, the doctors really just said, oh, you have to live with your chronic pain. We don't know how to, here's your medication. And which doesn't heal the chronic pain. It barely puts a Band-Aid over it, really makes it worse.
Yeah.
And finally, I found a doctor who understood the nature of chronic pain, and also understood a holistic approach to healing. He was both a lot of Western doctor, but he had a lot of Eastern teaching under his belt as well. And he understood the nature of chronic pain in the brain and how to heal it.
Mhm.
He was the one that took me. I went into his pain management program. His name is Dr. Peter Prescott. He's passed away now, but he wrote a book, Conquer Chronic Pain.
Mhm.
I would advise anybody who's a chronic pain sufferer or knows someone who is to get that book on Amazon.
Wow. Yeah, well, I'll get the information from you and I'll link it in the show notes so that we can make sure if anybody wants to grab it, they have easy access to get it.
Great. Yeah. So thanks. So that's kind of the backstory. Anyway, I went into this program, and a couple things I learned. I learned how much my past was haunting me,
Mm.
and I learned that there was a big emotional component to it that I hadn't realized. I also found out when I was there, um, when I was at this program, that because this was not just chronic pain, there's an addictive quality to that.
Mhm.
And I was told that people that are in recovery from addiction, the odds are that they're going to relapse. 80% will relapse in the first year. And
Mm.
I was like, well, I didn't like those odds.
Mhm.
And oh, I'm doomed. And I'm 10 years and almost 10 years in recovery now. I'm good. I haven't relapsed, thank
Congratulations.
goodness.
Yeah.
But thank you. But I also said to myself, what's wrong with this model?
Mhm.
If can we do better than this?
Mhm.
So I pretty much stepped into the role, because of the fallout that addiction just generally, which is of course all underneath it is some sort of emotional
Yeah.
trauma,
Yeah.
right? That hasn't been resolved.
Mhm.
So I dedicated my life. When that counselor told me that, I was like, when I get out of here, I'm going to dedicate my life to seeing if I can move the needle on that relapse rate. And that's all part of healing.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I got here. So
Yeah.
all that I do is under this umbrella of stress management.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's an amazing story, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. And you've been through a lot, and a lot of the people who are listening have also been through very similar types of experiences. And I really want to make sure that we use our time together to help these people who are listening, do more of that stress management through all these different, not all, we obviously can't go through all the tools, but we can go through a select few of these tools to talk about to help. So the first one that I wanted to talk about, I want to mention the physical chronic pain. And the reason why is because, as you know, a lot of people who have experienced emotional abuse of any sort, right, have also gotten these leftover physical symptoms. When I was with my abuser, I was experiencing these physical symptoms. I was having migraine headaches. I was having TMJ. I was having twitches in my limbs. I was having eye twitches. I was having nausea, panic attacks, gastro issues in my stomach and things like that. So, and I know a lot of other people have other kinds of issues, other kinds of pain that they're dealing with and living with, and physical ailments. So I'd love for you to talk to us a little bit about that and how you understand this to work as far as the emotional pain, because you experienced that, you know, because you said, you know, the physical pain, you know, and the past was haunting you because of these emotional types of things that happened to you. So can you speak to us about that and how that sort of manifests from emotional to physical?
Yeah, so let's just get a handle. Thank you so much for that question. Let's get a handle on chronic pain. Chronic pain is, define it, is any pain, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, psychological, whatever, any pain that's felt 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more.
Wow.
If it
15
doesn't
out
feel
of
good,
30, 15. So pretty much half the time.
15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more, that
Okay.
anything at that minimum or more is chronic pain.
Okay.
And why is that important? Because chronic pain changes the
Mm,
way the way the brain operates.
okay.
So it was very interesting to hear. I mean, I think I heard what you said, that you had this this leftover symptom relative to the emotional abuse.
Mhm.
I challenge that. I challenge those words,
Okay.
because you're describing to me a brain on chronic pain, a nervous system on chronic pain.
Oh, so what you're saying is that even though I was experiencing these things that I was feeling like were in the past, they're actually present moment in my brain
Yeah,
creating
because
that pain.
you're still stressed
Oh,
out. You're
okay.
still under stress. So
Oh,
here's
good.
the thing. So the body has this beautiful stress response that, you know, we produce all kinds of powerful chemicals to respond when we're under threat.
Hmm.
And then we go back to normal. So we right, we fight, we flight, we run, we shut down, we do whatever, and then we go back to normal. That's a stress response that's normal.
Okay.
What happens when we're chronically stressed, like in an abuse situation or an unresolved trauma situation or a betrayal situation, or a physical illness
Hmm.
situation, is that the stress response gets put on, it gets stuck on.
Okay. Like the lever just is like stuck and we can't turn it
Yeah,
off. Yeah.
it's out of balance. So it's
Okay.
out of balance, not normal anymore. It's gone out of balance. And all those symptoms you described, and then all the ones
Mhm.
that, you know, that you said other people have these other things,
Yeah.
those are all results of a stress response gone out of balance.
Okay.
You can't separate. It's so important. You
Yeah.
can't separate physical from emotional from spiritual. This is why you need a holistic approach.
So it's all the same.
It's all the same. Yeah, if that would be like this one huge piece there that I think would be helpful for everybody, just to kind of understand when
Why do
we're
you,
stressed.
yeah, why do you think that, I mean, just from your perspective, why do you think it's important not to separate those out?
Because we're whole people, and
Mhm.
we need to be. See, here's the thing. I'll give you an example.
Okay.
So my X-rays are pretty amazing. I've got a split bone in my low spine, and I've got a bunch of hardware. Right
Okay.
now, doctors is kind of, most Western doctors that I saw before I met Dr. Prescott, they would just look at my X-rays and they would go, "Oh, you know, here are your pain medicines." Right.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. You can have 3 people with X-rays that look just like mine, and this will be what you'll see. One has symptoms all the time. It's chronic pain all the time. Another one has symptoms when they're stressed. And another one has symptoms not at all.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got 3 different responses to the same condition. How do you explain that just
Right.
looking at the X-ray? Everybody's brain works the same. We just have to understand what we have is a different environment. We're in
Oh,
a
okay.
different
Yeah. So to
environment.
clarify, yeah. So the
Yeah,
brain wiring is the same. It's the
response.
outer environments and how we respond to it that makes a change.
That's right.
Thank you
That's
for
right.
clarifying that.
But you can't actually, you can't see what's happening with the patient if you're just looking at the X-ray, if you're just
Right.
looking at the physical. And when I met Dr. Peter Prescott, one of the first things he said to me is he didn't want to know anything about my records or my X-rays, or he didn't want to look at any of that stuff. He said to me, I want to know who you are.
Really?
Yeah, he was the first doctor that actually, wanted to know about me,
Mhm.
not my symptoms. So
Yeah.
it's a very different approach. So that I
Yeah.
hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it really does. And I'm glad that you're able to clarify that. And I think also it's really important for us to, that's why I have people like you on here, so that we can say, like, I feel really good when I do, let's say, meditation, but I also feel really good when I work out, because one thing is working in your spiritual world or your mental world or emotional, and then other things are physical. And like you said, you do the yoga where the trauma informed yoga, because you got to move that stuff out of your body. So I definitely love the idea of making sure that we're looking at all of these things, not just one piece of the puzzle, but taking a bigger holistic approach to helping ourselves move from where we maybe feel not so great, stressed, emotional or whatever, to where we want to be. So yeah, so that definitely does. So let me ask you, when we're talking about people who have chronic pain, and thank you for making that distinction, as well as for describing the 15 days out of 30 for 3 months, because I think, a lot of people don't even realize that they are suffering with chronic pain and things like that. So for people who have experienced abuse, trauma, things like that, and they have these, like, now they say, oh yes, I must be experiencing chronic pain because this is what I have been having it 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more. What's the next step for, once you realize that this is the case for you, to, okay, how can I start to change this? What's the very next step?
Wow. Well, the first step is to accept where you are. I think it's really
Okay.
important because we tend to deny
Mm-hmm.
that things are as bad as they are.
Yeah.
So that's important. I would say get help. I would, my first thing is get with a trauma specialist,
Okay.
get with a trauma therapist. I just think they're really helpful. I'm a great coach in that space,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not a therapist, just to be really clear on that.
Right.
It's just really important, it's you'll be able to find more people that therapists that are trauma informed now, or that are trauma trained now, than
Yeah.
maybe 10 years ago or even 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say move in that direction. Another thing is there's a hierarchy to healing. First, nervous system. What kind of shape is the nervous system in? Second, the sense of belonging. Third, then you can learn and reason, but you have to do one, you have to do them in order.
Yeah. You got to
So
take steps. Yeah.
so
One.
when we're in chronic pain, one of the things that's happened is that the nervous system is dysregulated,
Mm-hmm.
and we're having panic attacks, and we don't feel safe, and
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to learn anything really in that space. So the first thing we do is we learn how to breathe consciously. It sounds really simple, and it is, but we need to practice it on a regular basis. So really just take a long, deep breath in, and as you do, allow the belly to fill. So allow those belly muscles to relax. And then as you exhale, fully exhale and use the abdominal muscles to kind of push the last of that air out before you inhale again. Nice, long, slow inhale and exhale, keeping that exhale as long or a little bit longer than the inhale.
Right.
So that we're actually telling the nervous system, oh, I'm safe after all.
Okay.
I'm safe after all. There's the 10th cranial nerve is called the vagus nerve, and vagus means wandering. It comes up into the face, the ears, it's down in the throat, down into the heart, and into all the organs. So when you have a gut reaction, that's the vagus nerve.
Yes.
Telling you, wake up. It's giving you information. So we want to make sure that's a part of our biology. We want to make sure that we leverage our biology in our favor. One of the ways to help regulate and tone the vagus nerve is to leverage that long, deep breath. The nervous system will follow the breath. This is predictable. And the mind follows the breath as well. So you've got this thing that you've got more power than you may realize. And in the chronic pain experience, probably what we're doing is we're breathing really shallow and we're breathing long and fast. And that does a bunch of things. That tells the vagus nerve that, oh, we're not safe. So it's reflected in, so we start feeling jittery and ungrounded. Also, most of the little organelles that in the lung called alveoli that take in oxygen and then release the toxin stuff that we don't need anymore out of the lung, they're in the base of the lung. Most of them, over 50%, are in the base of the lung. So when we're shallow breathing, what happens?
It's not getting there.
We're not oxygenating the cells properly, and we're not releasing the toxins, and we start getting a headache and we wonder what happened. Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So you take, 5 or 6, if you start feeling like that during the day, you start feeling kind of lethargic, a little bit brain fog, 5 or 6 deep breaths, and you'll be like, oh, I'm better. Even better, 3 minutes of it.
Right.
I'll tell you one more. If you can do a practice of long, deep breathing, 11 minutes of that for 40 days in a row, it'll change your life. It's that powerful. It's that powerful.
It's interesting too, because when you're talking about that, you just think about that there's not a lot of conscious effort put into breathing just in a normal day. Like it's on automatic anyway, because your brain wants to keep you alive. But when we make that intention to pay attention to the breathing, then what you're saying is a lot of amazing things will happen, because it's part of your biology. You need to get that down to those deeper parts of your lungs and oxygenate your brain and, all of that, every part of your body. So I'm glad you shared those techniques, because I use those kinds of techniques for myself. I've actually done breath work, which I don't know if you've done. You probably have done some breath work too, which,
oh yeah,
when you're talking about 11 minutes, and then you start doing breath work, you start getting some amazing things happen, which is really, really awesome too. So we, to go back, we started talking about the chronic pain, and that, accepting where you are, getting a trauma therapist, and just these even things, like simple things that we can do by ourselves to practice breathing, right? Just even something like that can be a good starting point for people.
Absolutely. The other one is hydrate.
Yes.
You want at least a half an ounce to an ounce of water per pound of body weight each day.
Yeah.
So people, I feel so much better when I'm properly hydrated. So that is a component. Another thing is, are you eating inflammatory foods? Food is information for the body. What kind of information are we giving it? I have a very sensitive inflammatory response. Part of my chronic pain was about the medication I was on. Part of it was about the emotional baggage that I was carrying, including the ancestral piece of it, which we'll get into later. And part of it was, was just this, my diet. I just had a diet that was, I didn't understand that at the time, but I went to you can ask a naturopath or a functional doctor they'll be able to help you with that. My GP really can't, he just, that's on his area, but a naturopath or a functional doctor will be able to help you with that.
Yeah.
So inflammatory foods are things like sugar, right? Alcohol,
Yeah.
caffeine, we're processed food, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, which is a little more complicated, and we could come and do a whole podcast on this sometime if you want,
Yeah.
is really learn how to leverage. We're already talking about learning how to leverage your neurobiology.
Mhm.
I could do a whole podcast just on leveraging these 4 hormones, the feel-good hormones, right? Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphin. How do we, there are our reactions to the presence or absence of those 4 hormones are known and predictable. So, wow,
Yeah.
that means when I meditate, I'm bringing in
Mhm.
feel good hormones. When
Mhm.
I have a massage, or I hug somebody, or I do some self massage, or or I have sex, or that brings oxytocin. A mother nursing her child, that brings in an oxytocin. Just kind of cuddling, that brings in oxytocin. Exercise,
Mhm.
that brings in
Endorphins and
all 4 of these. Yeah. So each one of these 4 hormones has certain things that happen when they're reduced in our system, or we have anxiety and worry and mood things and insomnia and all kinds of things like that. And then there are certain things that we can do to increase the presence of those hormones, and that will change the way we feel.
yeah, that's a whole other topic I'm glad you brought it up because, I obviously know about hormones, but what, you don't necessarily think, oh, maybe I should be trying to incorporate more of these feel good things to help me heal. Right. And now I know. And so does everyone else listening. So thanks. So let's, because I want to make sure we don't miss anything when it comes to the chronic pain, right? Because there are a lot of people who are suffering from chronic pain. And now we have some different ideas, some different things that we can do. And the other thing that you talked about, like the whole holistic piece about it, are you hydrated? Are you having inflammatory foods? Are you, dealing with the stuff that's going on emotionally? We can't just look at the x-ray, like you said, we have to look at the entire picture. So I think if you could speak to that, just like making sure that you're not forgetting a piece to the puzzle. Have you ever had people who you've worked with who maybe were like, no, I don't need to work on this, or no, I don't want to, focus on that. I'd rather focus on this, and not really bringing in the full holistic piece?
Well, there are people that the problem in this space, we could get a little bit, first of all, we could get overwhelmed just because we're in chronic pain. Our system's already overwhelmed. So, that's kind of like a given. So I deal with that all the time. Really, the first thing I do when I sit with a new client is assess the state of their nervous system, because hierarchy of healing. First we deal with the nerve, then we can learn. Once there's a sense of calmness and a sense of belonging, then we can have a session and I can teach, they can learn something, we can teach each other, but we have to be on the level playing field, both of us regulated and both of us feeling like we belong. Right. So that's important. The thing is about today is there's a lot of alternatives out there, and we don't know what we don't know. So, and that can be overwhelming. Just me saying that statement, well, I don't know what I don't know, and I might be missing something. Well, you know what? Concentrate on what you can do.
Yeah.
And we want to start with the nervous system, with the breath. And we want to clean the body the best we can. And then we want to work with whatever kind of trauma we're carrying. I like to, so I've said trauma therapist. I also like to bring the ancestral piece in, because that's a piece as well. Yeah. But if you start with really start with the nervous system, and start really trying to clean your diet up, and deal with any kind of emotional trauma that isn't resolved, that's going to get you started.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't sound overwhelming when you put it like that.
Yeah. So we just kind of start where we are with what we have, and we start at the beginning, which is, let's start with the nervous system.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Start at the nervous system and then focus on what you can control, like you're drinking more water, getting more exercise, eating healthy foods, and then working on the emotional piece or whatever you need to do there. So good. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So because you had given me a little segue into the ancestral healing, I really want to talk about that. I'm super excited about learning more about that. So first and foremost, can you just explain to us what generational trauma and like ancestral healing, what those things are?
Sure. Yeah. So um, we really are the culmination of the gifts and the burdens of our ancestors. We come in imprinted with that information. And yes, spiritual teachers tell us that, but this is science. I have this foot in science, and I wouldn't be sitting here talking about this if I didn't have it, if it wasn't grounded.
Yeah.
Because I just can't, you can't bring me woo woo without some grounding. It's just not the way I operate. I understand that there's some things out there that are mysterious, and I'm cool to hang out with. I don't know. That's fine. But in this space, I like to make sure that it's grounded. Ancestral clearing is a process that helps us release the burdens of that. And I'll give you an example of, from like a sciencey point of view, what we have seen is researchers have found that descendants, children, grandchildren, and now great-grandchildren of the Holocaust, for instance, have higher cortisol levels. Cortisol is a stress hormone. So that's kind of into their system. Now that would be an epigenetic change. That's not in the basic wiring, which is the DNA. It's in the genetic part. It's responding to the environment, which we talked about a little bit earlier. Responding to the environment. We're all wired with the same brain, but depending on how our environment is, how that brain operates is different.
Right.
So ancestral clearing, our ancestral imprints affect us as the same way epigenetically.
And we don't even know it. We don't, for the most part, we don't know that that's generation upon generation upon generation of what they experienced. We never even met our grandmother, great grandmother, great great grandfather, whatever. Right.
Yeah. So it's so interesting to be in this work, because we don't know what we're carrying until we don't carry it anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting to do an ancestral healing kind of modality, which is ancestral clearing is a clearing. We don't call it healing because we're not doctors or therapists, and we can't make claims. But it's interesting the effect that it has. It's another aspect to bring in around chronic pain. And I work with anybody on almost every day. I work with somebody with ancestral clearing, and they're not, a lot of my clients are not chronic pain sufferers. Of course, I do it. We include that for everyone, all the clients that are chronic pain too, but I have lots of clients that just come in for just ancestral clearing.
Right. So tell us how it works. Like, can you explain to us, like, if I just came to you and said, I want you to do an ancestral clearing on me, like, what would the process look like? What would it?
Well, there are 5 different techniques, and I can share one of them with you. So it's experiential, and it's I can share one at the level of a podcast interview, and everybody will have an experience of it.
Okay.
So lately, one of the things that pretty much all my clients have been coming in with this whole part of the year, and we all have this, so it just happens to be coming up a lot lately, is the wounding that we have around our mothers. And so what I'd like to do is share with you an ancestral clearing for the mother wound. And I'd love for everyone to just listening, if you could just sit quietly, notice just kind of what sensations happening in the body, and breathe normally, and just let these words pass over you. Oh, what we do in this practice is we're asking the creator of all that is, creator, God, whatever you want to call that energy source. We're asking the creator to help us release that which we know, which no longer serves us. And we use the word forgive as our word that means offer it up to creator.
Okay.
So that's how we're using that word. So here we go.
Okay.
Divine creator, all that you are, thank you for the gift of life and connection. We ask humbly that you please help us in all our relationships and all our ancestors and all their relationships throughout all space, time, timelines, lives, lifetimes, realms, and incarnations. For any time there was a rupture in the relationship between mother and child in the womb, through the birth experience, as a newborn, or at any other time, and for all that led up to it and arose from it, including unhealthy beliefs or limitations, for poor boundaries, an unrealized sense of self or poor self-esteem. Please help us all, everyone involved, to forgive one another and forgive ourselves. Please and thank you. For any time mothers felt fearful or powerless in the face of the experience of conception or birth, and for any adverse effects this had on the child. For all regret, injustice, or anger around any unhealthy womb or birth experiences, including miscarriage, abortion, or any sexual diseases, or for any guilt or shame that followed. For any time anyone felt a sense of shame or that there was something wrong with them, but they didn't know what. Please help us all forgive each other and help everyone involved forgive and release each other and forgive ourselves. Please and thank you. For all codependence that developed between mothers and children in the entire lineage, and for all that arose from it, including but not limited to caretaking others to the point of resentment and exhaustion. For neediness or feeling we had to have the approval of others in order to act rather than stand on our own power and act from there. Please help everyone involved, directly or indirectly, to forgive and release each other and forgive and release ourselves, please, and thank you. For any time women felt the weight of the obligation to bear children, but didn't experience the joy of it, and for all that the children felt because of it. For any time anyone felt the pressure of having to live the unrealized dreams of the mother rather than their own. For any time we felt we had to play it small in life rather than rise into our full potential. Please help us all forgive and release one another and forgive and release ourselves, please and thank you. And divine creator, please help all the mothers forgive all the children. Please help all the children forgive all the mothers. Help all the fathers forgive all the children. And please help all the children forgive all the fathers. Help all the women forgive all the men, and all the men forgive all the women. And help all the children forgive all the women and forgive all the men throughout the entire lineage for all that happened and didn't happen, and for all anyone made it mean, and for all the letdown because of it, for once and for all of it. Please and thank you, please and thank you, please and thank you. And just take a breath in and let it out and notice how that feels in the body.
Feels really good to me. It feels really calming and like almost like a neutrality. Like I've reached like, I feel like very neutral about, I don't know who these people are. I've never even met, the lineage of my family, but I felt really good about it. And I felt, I did have a question though, because I made me think of something. What about the traumas that I've had? Like, because you had mentioned miscarriages and like things like that, which I've had some of those. How do I release those traumas from my offspring and their children and like those future generations? Is that just work that I need to do on myself? And if I had anything left over that wasn't cleared personally?
So we started the prayer for us and all our ancestors. So it includes everything in this lifetime. The interesting thing about this work, again, to bring the science in, we're working in the present moment. I had everybody focus on the now, stay with the breath, focus on their sensations, listen to the words. They became present. And why is that powerful? Because in the present moment, we have access to past, present, future all at once. So we're clearing the whole shooting match when we work in the present moment. That's how that works.
Wow. And this was just one, what you just did was just one of the
Mhm.
5 different techniques of the
Yeah.
process to do the clearing.
Yeah. We've got ways of kind of
Yeah.
drilling down and getting into that would just take that would take the podcast in a completely different direction. But it's very interesting. The person that teaches this is John Newton of Health Beyond Belief. Also, Howard Wills pioneered this. They both are in this work. John developed the 5 techniques, trademarked and registered this product, this modality as a process. He teaches it. I'm one of his practitioners. I've been in this work for about 9 years now. And it's just a very powerful practice. It's amazing to me. As you said, we don't know what we're carrying until we don't carry it anymore. We don't know what we're carrying because we don't really know what happened. And so this process is it's very interesting to work the different ways that we have to kind of get in and see what's coming up for the person in the moment. We call it whatever the current layer is, right?
So when you get into the layers like that, like when you're doing this with somebody, you're using all the different techniques and,
Mhm.
are there things that start coming up for them? Like not necessarily that they would know something from what happened or like what great grandmother had this or that, but maybe more emotionally, like there's something that came up like, oh, I have this feeling of X, Y, or Z, and I don't know where it's coming from. Is that the kind of thing that happens in these sessions?
Well, we actually ask the person, what would you like to work on?
Mm-hmm.
And if it can be physical or emotional or spiritual, it doesn't really matter. I haven't, I'm not saying it won't happen, but I'm just saying I haven't had somebody come to me yet with a thing that with an issue that this practice hasn't been able to address. So
Wow.
that's, to me, that's just like, wow, I don't
Yeah.
know too many modalities that work like that. That's acupuncture would be another one, by
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah.
Acupuncture is amazing. It can pretty much address anything.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. And what are you thinking about? So let's say somebody came to you and they had chronic pain in their hips, right? I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know. So have
Sure.
chronic pain in their hips and they want to do ancestral clearing, right?
Mhm.
Could there be something emotionally or is there something, I guess, something emotionally attached that could be from something like you had said, like childbirth or something in a generation? You might not necessarily know that, but you would know how to clear it, right?
Well, that's a very interesting question. We have a model that kind of a framework that we start with.
Mm-hmm.
And so the hips really in this framework would be sexual hurts and wrongs. We would just start there, boom, right out the window. And remember, I'm the practitioner, you're the client, we're asking source, we're in the present moment. And so what happens is there's a lot of information right in the present moment. And we work the process around, well, there's a whole nother process that we use that helps us access that information. You've got sensation in the hips.
Mm-hmm.
We have you put your attention on that, which is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of see what comes up around that in terms of memories that the body knows and will release. And that's when we get into the, oh, well, I don't, I was I'll just give you an example. Remember, Mrs. Scientific Method here. So just understand. So I was in a session with John Newton many years ago, and he's like, where's the thing? And it's in my wherever it was, and I was like, put your attention on that. Wait for the image or memory to come, and all of a sudden, I'm standing out. There's fire all around me. I'm looking at these people, and I'm going, well, that never happened in this lifetime. What the heck is that?
So you had tapped into something in your mind.
And I never experienced anything, and I had never had a past life experience like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I guess what that is. I mean, I allowed, but I know enough about the work to know that I just allow whatever comes in, and I was like, okay. And so it was the first time that I ever was able to access a past memory.
Yeah. And now that you had that memory, Yeah. And then you can release it easier, like you said, or clear it because now you have a little bit more awareness about it.
Well, actually, what was happening there was I was so take that that memory of
Yeah.
me, being thrown fire or whatever,
Right.
and that somehow the energy of that going unresolved and the lineage got passed down, and whatever was coming up for me in that moment where John was like, what's the memory, where is it in the body, and what's the memory, that's what the thing was that we were resolving, was the unresolved stuff from that event.
Yeah. So it just
So
has gone into your body, like through
yeah,
how the biology
it,
part of it that I don't really know.
it's like a frequency,
Yeah.
that just keeps going until you change the frequency.
Yeah. And then you are basically turning that off, right? So that it stops with you, right? So it doesn't continue to
That's
keep
right.
going.
You're breaking the cycle, you're shifting it into, or you're shifting the frequency into something that's, healthy instead of
Yeah.
unhealthy. Yeah.
Wow,
Mhm.
that's amazing. That sounds really, really interesting
Yes.
and helpful, right? And helpful because, you know, I want to try all the things, I want to try all the things, and learn everything because why not? What if it really helps you? What if it's super duper effective, and that's why I do this. That's why I want people to be able to experience different things. So I'm also going to go back to this recording and put on the timestamp when you started that prayer in case anybody wants to go back and
Oh,
listen.
great.
So I'll include that there. So one thing that I always thank you for, first of all, again, thank you so much for sharing this information with us. It's been really enlightening. One thing I love to ask all my guests when we start nearing the end of the podcast is, what is something that not a lot of people know about you, Elizabeth, that you could share with us?
Wow. Oh, it's interesting. The first thing that came in, I don't know how your audience is going to like this, but it's just what the first thing that came in was, I'm a Tool fan.
Tool?
Yeah, I love Tool. I really love Perfect Circle. And
Okay.
that's kind of like, what? Yeah.
Well, you know what? We may have some other ones out there too, or fans of it as well.
I really enjoy. I mean, it's a little dark. I mean, I tend to be a little bit higher frequency generally, but
Yeah.
I do really enjoy uh, that other band, a Tool band. Some of the original Tool stuff I love, but the Perfect Circle stuff, I love that too.
Okay.
Um, I was an equestrian as a kid. That's kind of
Really?
back. Yeah, that's how I
Oh.
was falling off a horse. Um, and and Oh yeah, another thing I'll just say is I've had to overcome sugar addiction,
Oh.
and I can really, it's so weird. I can remember what ice cream tastes like vanilla ice cream or peach ice cream or chocolate ice cream, but I have no desire to eat it, which is that to me is like, that's what happens when we do the work.
Yeah.
Like, how does that happen? I don't know. That's part of that's
That's really
part of
interesting.
healing.
That's really interesting that you say that because I always talk about like when I help people, it's hard to describe what it feels like to heal, from like subconscious wounds and things like that. And I always say it's like watching a movie that once made you cry or once made you scared or once made you really sad. And like it's going on in the background and you might be doing dishes or washing, the floors or whatnot. And you can see that it's up there, but you're not like having a hysterical breakdown or like anxiety because it's whatever scared you. So that reminds me a lot about what you're saying, because it's like you no longer have the sugar addiction. You don't want it or need it or desire it, but you can still taste it. You still remember what it tastes like. It's the same
Uh,
thing.
and I remember how I enjoyed it, but I
Yeah.
don't have to go down and pick it up at the store. It's just, no, I love how you describe that, because that's
Yeah.
beautifully stated. That's exactly how it
Yeah. Well,
works.
I loved yours. I was like, oh, I can use that as an analogy because it's the same thing. Well, thank you for sharing that with me and all of the information that you've been able to give to us. And if you could, please let everyone know how they can get a hold of you, reach out to you, if they want to connect, because, you know, this is stuff I don't do. And if people are interested in it, I'd love to send them your way.
Well, thank you so much. You can find me at elizabeth-kipp.com. You got to put the hyphen in between Elizabeth and Kipp, K-I-P-P, like
Okay.
Peter Pan. Elizabethkipp.com is a web designer and a photographer, and she's amazing, but she's not me. So
Okay.
Elizabeth-kipp.com, and I'm all over social media, and you can get a hold of me through my website. Yeah, or you
Facebook.
can instant message me on Facebook or Instagram or
Okay.
LinkedIn or wherever. I'm pretty much all over.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I will also include all of those links in the show notes so that if you'd like to get a hold of Elizabeth, you can certainly do that. Was there anything else that you wanted to share?
Well, I'd just like to say I wrote a book called The Way Through Chronic Pain, Tools to Reclaim Your Healing Power, which is actually a companion book to Dr. Peter Prescott's book. It's kind of the user's manual. His is like the researchery, doctory part with some great exercises in the back. I helped him write those, and I've done those, so they're powerful. And I brought in the patient, the voice. I felt it was really important to write a book that for doctors, all healthcare workers, families and friends, and then people that are in chronic pain, all the people that take care of them and the people that are in it, that really spoke to the voice. What does the voice sound like of a chronic pain sufferer? What's really going on there? And how can we help that? And what tools did I use, non-pharmaceutical tools, to heal? And so that's my book. It's not very big, but it's packs a punch.
Is
So
it on Amazon? Can we get it on
it's
Amazon?
available on Amazon. You can get an autographed copy through my website, of course, but
Okay.
it's absolutely on Amazon as a Kindle or a paperback.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm sure everybody would love to look at that, because knowing what you do now and how you help people, that's a great place to start too. So thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Well, thank you so much. It was great to be here. I can't wait to share your audience with my audience.
Thank you. Thank you for being here with me today in the Emotional Abuse Recovery Podcast. I hope you found value here with me. If this podcast episode was helpful to you, I'd love for you to hit subscribe and leave me a review. My goal is to help you go from feeling stuck to set free. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook, and you can check out whentearsleavescars.com for more resources and information to help you with your own emotional abuse recovery. Until next time, here's to believing in